Dickens. I am the director, curator of the new gallery here at Austin Peay. So thank you for coming out. If you haven't had a chance to see Wansoo Kim's exhibition in the new gallery, please do so. It'll be up through October 22nd. So you have just a little bit of time left to go see it. Hopefully, if you haven't seen it, this talk will make you want to go see it. And if you have seen it, hopefully this talk will make you want to go see it again. So that's the plan, right? So before we start, I do want to acknowledge the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Yuchi, Shawnee, and Cherokee First Nations on which we are organizing, exhibiting in the gallery, listening, and learning today. So this is our second event we've had as far as a lecture, so it's good to see people in person again. And thanks for everyone that had joined us through Zoom. Wansoo Kim was born and raised in South Korea, where he received his BFA in ceramics from Seoul National University of Science and Technology. He earned an MFA in studio art from University of Nebraska, Lincoln in 2018, and is currently an assistant professor of art at Austin Peay State University. He's exhibited his work throughout the United States in many solo and group exhibitions at venues including Plug Projects in Kansas City, Northwest Art Center, North Dakota, and the Medici Gallery at the University of Nebraska, and of course, right across the art squad over in the new gallery at Austin Peay State University. He has given visiting artist lectures at several institutions such as Penn State University, Vanderbilt, University of Central Missouri, Minot State University, and Seoul National University of Science and Technology at the Belter Crane Yard Studios in Kansas City, where he also participated in their Artist in Residence program. He's here tonight to talk more about his creative process. For those of you who joined us in the new gallery today, where he talks specifically about the work in the new gallery, he's in here to go a little bit more in depth about his creative practice. So thanks for coming back out, and a thank you for those who were in the gallery and came back out again tonight. So if just a little bit of housekeeping, if you haven't signed in yet, we can do that afterwards. That's great. When you signed in and received a little ticket, you can turn this after the lecture. You can turn it in to me for this beautifully limited edition hand-printed letterpress poster printed by Patrick Vincent. And so turn that in, and if like Wansoo is nice enough and you ask him really nicely, he might even sign it for you. All right. So I want y'all to give an applause to Wansoo for being here for his work, but also it is a real treat to us to have him here as a colleague, and also to see his hair down. This is nice. So a round of applause for the hair, and a round of applause for tonight's lecture. So thank you.
Can you all hear me well? Yeah. Is it people online doing okay? Yeah. Well, thanks, Michael, for amazing introduction. And before I start talking about my works, I'd like to thank the Department of Art and Design and all my faculty and staff colleagues, and also special thanks to Sika having this event for me, and Michael and gallery assistants. It's been really amazing working with them. So today I'm going to talk about my studio practice, and also where I'm from, what I've been making in my studio. So I am from South Korea, and there are two red circles on the screen, and I am from a small town called Gangneung. Gangneung is where this red circle is. And I lived there for 20 years, and then I moved to Seoul, which is capital city, which is this last red circle for undergrad. So Korea, just growing up in Korea, it has such a unique history, and a lot of them because of its unique situation, politically, socially, culturally. I find that my country has really in a really complicated situation because of all of them, and it was colonized by Japan like 100 years ago. So there was a cultural connection and a disconnection at the same time. And then politically, it's really complicated because of it's the only country divided in the world, and because of all the China, Japan, North Korea, Russia, America. Now I see like this kind of situation more objectively because I'm not in Korea anymore, and I learned just a lot about this just living in the States. I also want to show you these two photos. I started to study ceramics as my major in undergrad, and because of the rich history we have in, especially in the field of ceramics, people just living on South Korea land for thousands of years, and the pots or like a culture of ceramics always been around with us. Just because of that, I just studying ceramics, especially I was looking at a lot of historical objects, and intentionally or also without my intention, I was like educated that these are so precious, and these are so valuable. These are something that I have to take it in my mind and then move to next step. So this is like a Korean vessel from Joseon Dynasty. Or I was also looking at this Munjar from also Joseon Dynasty, or this Buncheongware, or this Goryeo Celadon, and it somehow it always like limits my creativity looking at these works. And I moving to the States back in 2013. I was doing exchange student, and just again like being more objective about my country or about the situation or my experience that I had there. I was able to just question like why is this so meaningful to me, or why do I have to look at these works, or even like why do I have to work with clay? Not just because I love this material. And I just went back, just looking at all the historical objects again, specifically from South Korea, and just question its value. When you look at a lot of functional objects from any kind of history, they usually have a certain function for each specific object. And some of them were only to display, or some of them only to store vinegar or soy sauce or food as a fertilizer. And those functions now no longer exist here anymore. And I find that the more conventional way, and we usually just use plastic a lot, and the role of the clay or role of ceramics sort of has been replaced by like a newer material like a plastic or styrofoam. So I found like a milk jug at a grocery store, and then just replicated the form of Korean ceramics and then put them in the milk jug. And this is a specifically really important piece of mine, because this piece sort of led me to think about what's inside or what's revealed or what's outside, or that kind of notion. So I started to really pay attention to interior of a 3D object. And when I looked at historical vessels having narrower openings, a lot of them I found that they didn't glaze the inside, and I just thought that why do they only like focus on the exterior? What about like just flip it and then changing it? So I started to put all the decoration on the inside of the vessel. That really got me interested in this idea. So I just play with the outside and inside of this 3D object, giving different like, visual contrast. Because of the milk jug piece, I was also interested in the material relationship between plastic and clay. So I wanted to play with this material and kind of really just question its value altogether. So I made this clay sculpture looking like a pagoda, But then if you look at the inside, there's also a ton of decorations, and then you can see through that decoration into the mirror, and kind of mirror reflection outline kind of connects with the plastic shape underneath. I made a sculpture with Korean traditional patterns on the exterior, but then I covered it with the plastic and kind of melting plastic in a way, and then just duplicated a bunch of them and then installed together. Lunch boxes, I just put raw clay in it, and then just really play with the idea of inside and out, and then material relationships at the same time. Really paying attention to like a 3D object. Also, I started to look at my surroundings. So with this piece, I question like with this relationship within the space. So depending on where you stand, or depending on like what you see, I was interested in like something can be revealed or something can be hidden. Another thing I was also interested in is like a pedestal or something that you put object on top. And I found this Western-looking furniture, and then put a sculptural object with the Korean traditional patterns on the exterior, and just put it all and then play together. Just by putting this object on top, I also started to question, what about start lifting the furniture itself, and then questioning the function of the furniture. And this piece is significantly also important to me, because with this piece, I was also questioned something like vertical or horizontal structure within the 3D object. So I wanted to make a little blob, more like an abstract sculpture. To me, at that time, I really wanted to say that all the cultural experience, or my thoughts on like political issues and everything kind of becomes this blob, and I question what sustains our daily lives. So I wanted to lift up like furniture from like, just a domestic environment. So being in the States, living here, one of the elements or the visual elements I was overwhelmed by is the presence of columns everywhere. Just being on campus a lot, or if I go to downtown, there are always columns everywhere, like a bank, or even just if you look at the domestic houses, there's like a small columns supporting the structure. And I was just really amazed by its beauty, or its structure, vertical structure. So I wanted to, since I was really inspired by that, I wanted to make a column which is the same height as me, and then just question kind of being in the Western culture from Asia, question like this cultural value to me. Then I also made another column, just fully decorating with the Korean traditional pattern called dancheong. So now I'm also into horizontality or like a verticality. And wherever I look at any kind of 3D object, to me, it was governed by vertical or horizontal structure. So like I understand my body just standing on the ground as a vertical structure, or just being in this building, I also see like horizontal ceiling or like a vertical wall. Like this is like a basic physicality. I was really interested in just studying it and thinking about it. And the things really obvious to me was like a human's legs, or like animals' legs, or the legs of furniture. I was just really inspired by their structure, or like their beauty as a 3D object. I spent such a great time in Michigan as an exchange student, and then I went to graduate school in Lincoln, Nebraska. And at the time, this like just thinking about more dichotomous notion when I think about something like inside and out or what's underneath, what's above. I wanted to really play with it all together. So especially this piece showing inside and out, or classic and clay, like some object on top, underneath, or columns. I visited my hometown during while I was in graduate school, and then there was a very small lake, and then I also found ducks just dabbling. To me, that when duck dabbles into the water, it kind of looked like it goes to another space, the other space. So, well, like the dog used to be this space, but then going to the other space, there's a like more like a dichotomous borderline, and I was inspired by that, and then wanted to make a sculpture talking about it. So this dog going to somewhere, but then he's coming back to see its butt. So the three yellow dogs going into somewhere else, but then this time like they don't know where they are. Just thinking about dogs, also I just thought about divers' gesture when they actually going into the water. So I also wanted to make more direct relationship to it, and then wanted to make this installation piece. So personally, in my studio practice, I realized that I was more interested in this like inside and out, but sometimes I'm more interested in columns or vertical structure. So this time I went back to the studying vertical structure and then make more abstract table look and then really play with the subtle visual difference. Column, the bottom part of the column becomes the top or vice versa, or this leg looking something object coming from the other space. So graduate school, just being in graduate school was really such a great experience for me because I can just create works, whatever I want. And another thing that I was interested in, especially with working with clay, was the firing process. So at the time, I watched Willy Wonka's Charlie, the Chocolate Factory, and then when he was talking about everlasting gobstoppers, the candy never melts, but then I make everlasting gobstopper with clay, and then once I fire in the kiln, it melts and then combine together. So I just kind of play with somebody thinking everlasting gobstoppers, but my everlasting gobstoppers, it just melts down. So on the left side, it's before firing, just stacking up all the everlasting gobstoppers, and then after firing, it just became more like 2D works. And this is the detailed view. So there's also like a dichotomy in their idea of construction and deconstruction. This time I wanted to make like a bunch of tables stacking up together, and then by adjusting their melting point, I found this melted table together and then became a sculpture that I was not expecting. And this is, there were a ton of details hidden because of it collapsed in the firing. I made also furniture-looking sculpture, but then this time I also pay attention to its inside detail. Plain surface with a single hole in the center, But then if you look from the side view, there's a hidden structure behind. And through that hole, I also placed a endoscope camera together, so viewers can really explore the inside of this sculpture. So these are the. And then there was a button where they accidentally clicked it, and then it was a screenshot. So they actually gave me some screenshot. So these are the images taken by viewers by accident. Then I also went back to the material investigation between plastic and clay, and I also found that one of the industrial process called vacuum forming was really interesting to me. So I applied for fellowship in SICA, which is a national clay conference, supported me to build a vacuum forming machine. So this is the machine that I built in graduate school. Obviously, my studio mate was more excited than me. I'm like, what did I do? But my studio was, there you go, Wansoo. And I played with this process. I found a little monkey, a toy from Goodwill, and then create this mountain, and then cover it with the plastic. And this is a back part of the sculpture. And this is, I called it the plastic island. Also back part of it, there's like a hidden monkey mountain underneath. Just really studying, thinking about the idea of inside and out, or what's revealed or hidden. Now at the time, I was also interested in our human body. Like socially, there's always a certain part of the body that we think is taboo to show. And making sculpture, I had opportunity to reveal the taboo-ish part of the body. So I really wanted to just make like an armpit and then really just pray for it. So I made like a blinky armpit. And this is called Bud Light. Looking at surroundings, there's always a trash cans everywhere, and people always throw some stuff inside. And so I wanted to make a trash can sculpture, but then this time the wall becomes the floor, and then floor becomes the wall. And if you look at the inside of the trash can, there's actually a ton full of the texture. And I made this texture with a small the army soldier, the toy soldier, just putting the thousands of them on the interior. So through a lot of experimentations, I really wanted to just put it all together, thinking about idea of inside and out within the space or within a 3D object. In my thesis show, I installed these translucent window screens where I can create temporary inside space of a gallery, and then I kind of guided viewers just to walk around and then going in, so they can really think about that motion. I want them to just think about their awareness or ignorance towards this subject. So depending on where you stand or what you see again, then the subtle visual difference was really matter to me at the time. I kept questioning myself, where is the inside? What is my definition of the inside? Or I wanted viewers to just think about what's your definition of the inside, and how much are you aware of this gallery as an inside space. Still using a little monkey and made a little troop. So they create their own society looking at each other on the inside. Or more abstract sculpture that I was inspired by all the vertical structures I've seen or I've gathered in my brain. But this time I wanted to lift up the floor, part of the floor, and then use it as a pedestal and put the sculpture on top. So in the sculpture, I wanted to play with the glaze because of gravity in the kiln, glaze naturally runs down, and that was the way that I could highlight the verticality of something. As opposed to the floor becomes the pedestal, this piece I wanted to bring one of the ceiling piece down and then use it as a pedestal, and then put this sculpture. And this abstract sculpture really doesn't show straight verticality or horizontality, but then I put like a little snowflake, like a cheese grinding, and wherever it sits, these little snowflakes actually shows that there is still hidden horizontality, and I was just interested in that idea. These ordinary table legs lose their functions by putting two other tables and lifting that up. Even though the function, the leg of the table doesn't show any functions in use, but then there's still like horizontality and verticality. And these two light bulbs, changing the light blue, yellow, yellow, blue constantly. This is called compiled from history and mundane object. I wanted to make a sculpture having more ambiguity as a visual element. Kind of looks like cactus in a way, or like coat hangers. Display that with a vessel and a plastic table. If you look closely at the plastic table, there's also hidden like leg figures. And then the inside of vessel says, "Speak to me." So there were actually some people looking at the inside of vessel and then just screaming. So after graduate school, I was lucky enough to do residency at Belger Crane Art Studios in Kansas City. And since I was just dealing with all kinds of things together, now at the time, it was time for me to just go back to creating sculptural vessels, and I really wanted to focus on that. So I just play with the objects that I was interested in, such as monkey in this piece, or creating blue-white vessels again, having a little more larger openings so I can put a lot of decorations. Not just working with the 2D paintings or drawings, I also wanted to put more 3D figures on the inside. And then still a questioning about notion of inside and out or within the space as well. The left vessel, I was inspired by a form of amphora from Greek. And then the right vessel, I was inspired by the Korean vessel moonjar. So if you look at the moonjar, there's just a full of leaf patterns. If you look at the Angora piece, there's a full of just toy soldiers. So you can see like individual toy soldiers kind of crawling, wandering around. This is called Open Me, and I really wanted people to try to open, but I intentionally glued that together, so nobody can really open. There was one person really angry about this because she wanted to see inside so bad, and I was the only one knowing what's in it, but there was nothing in it. This piece is called Bashful Vessels. It's just too shy to show the inside, so it's just a full blank on the inside. And I also had a great opportunity to have a solo show at Plug Project in Kansas City. And this time, since my brain kind of works for this, works for that, and I wanted to combine together and then create an environment where I can show how my brain actually works. So lifting up the table, I wanted to create more like a domestic environment. So making books or mugs, but they're like manipulated by me, so they're not like normal object in a way. This book named Always Planned to Read but Never Opened. And then there's also toy soldiers crawling around. The mug handles intruding the inside of this pot. One thing I also have noticed while making all kinds of pieces here that it was I kind of felt that I was missing in a piece. That there were ideas that I was interested in, but then there were not myself in the work in a way. So this time I wanted to make more works for myself. So I put my little figure here, and at the time, my hair was really short, but then if you look at the little small figure on top of the head, I said, I'm just gonna grow out my hair and see how it goes. And it's been 3 years. To really connect myself with my idea more directly as a visual object, I put my head and then sculpted it, and then my idea was just this part was growing from the head. And then it's just full of a leaves pattern. When you look at a lot of historical objects, the leaves are really significant and then symbolic because it's all like dominantly been used. And in Korean culture, it's been also used a lot and on a lot of pieces. So just thinking about like my Korean culture and how it's affected in my studio practice, it's not I'm always admire the fact that culture dominating me. I'm like questioning its value and why is it meaningful to me. So I have a bittersweet feeling toward my Korean culture because it's just so dominating growing up. In that culture, I'm trying to find my identity and my struggle in a way. So table monsters. Finally, we're making through to the table monsters. So with my interest in furniture, with my struggle in Korean culture, I found myself that I was interested in, or I was intrigued by Korean historical side tables, and but I wanted to give so much freedom in making process. So the idea of monster, just thinking about it, there's no certain form or certain shape that you have to create when it comes to monstrous object. So I feel much more freedom in making process, and then still like play and then show my struggles with Korean furnitures mostly. So this monster looks like just an animal figure to me, or maybe a snail or some kind of creature. But then, because of the way it's presenting, it looks like a head or helmet in a way. And this is an actual the image of the furniture that I was inspired by, and I wanted to just replicate its form and then question its value to me. But then this monster's eyes are actually at the bottom of the back part, like here. So it's kind of like playing the or disguising perception of the viewers. This monster, on the right side, it's also from Korea, traditional tables. This monster growing out from the bottom, making two vertical structures, and on the left side, it's copying the form of the furniture on the right side. And this monster thinks that, oh, you guys see, like, which one is true, which one is the real artifact. But then there's the huge difference in textures or in the form. So this monster thinks they're smart, but they're actually showing true difference. And this is the actual the furniture I was inspired by. And if you look closely in the gallery, there is eyes hidden under the table. Traditionally in Korea, when you serve food with these side tables, people actually holding the table above the head and then bringing the food to you. So there's also like a connection in that history. And just looking at this piece in the gallery, I also like its shadow more like similar to each other. I made this furniture, the sculpture, back in April, and at that time, there was a hatred going on to especially like Asian people, and I was so impacted by it, and I just couldn't get away from it. So while making it, I just wanted to put more the direct message about it and about what's going on. So I just painted a flag and then covered by yellowish glazes, and then this title like camouflage. These monsters holding one table together, they can split into two different pieces, and this is the object that I was inspired by. This table was to serve like hot bowls, two hot bowls together. So that's why there are two holes on top. And these monsters blocking that hole, but they're still showing it. And I wanted to make a system where you can put monsters together and they use it as a one side table, but then you can also put it separate and then just use it as a two side tables or sculptures. And the middle part, this work is titled Red Rocket. I have a little dog and I was inspired by his red rocket. This work also inspired by one of the Korean table, and I titled Elegance and Eloquence because it's really expressive and then it's elegant at the same time. This is the table I was inspired by, and then back in the times, this table was used for like a ritual ceremony. This work is titled table lifting, like a weight lifting. I By the way, there was a writer who wrote about my exhibition, and then you can read about you can read her writing in the gallery. And her name is Veronica, and she was saying that monsters actually trying really hard to hold the furniture together. And when she talked about it, I realized that wow, they're really working hard. I really didn't realize that I'm giving them labor to do it, and I just feel really bad now. It has to hold the table permanently until somebody breaks it. And then it has a different face on the other side. And by the way, thanks Veronica for your inspiring writing for me. And this table is called Four Face. It has an opening where you can actually put some books in it. And there's a different face all the sides. And if you look the inside of this monster, I also created like a throat point. So those of you who are wondering what this triangle means, I just simplified the throat of the monster. And this work is titled Three Tables. I was hoping to have all my sculptures being used in the gallery, but because of the pandemic, all the beverage is not allowed. But I wanted to make more like tables on top where people can have a conversation interacting with these monsters. If you look at the inside of the mouth, there's also another facial face in it. And then if you look at these two holes here, there's also tongue-looking or penis-looking object. This sculpture is also like a two parts. This time I wanted to just play with my imagery that I have when I think about monsters. So I created like 4 different areas where I can just show all kinds of different monsters, try to hold each table, and between each tables there's a space that can actually exist. I had such a great conversation with Michael, just curating or installing these exhibitions. There's like a ceiling just fell down. Are you okay? Yeah. It needs like better horizontality. Or maybe monster is intriguing. Talking about monster. That's wow. Sorry that happened. So we wanted to make more flying monsters because in the exhibition everything was standing sculptures. So it was really challenging. It was really pushing me creating these flying monsters holding tables together. And this monster is holding this 2D shape of the table in this photo. And then I just wanted this monster to hold him that more like an idea, not just even though it's like a 3D and 2D at the same time, but that idea of the table. And this table, I split it into 4 pieces, and then this monster is growing out and then holding 4 pieces from one table. These tables, I built it in the opposite way. So I thought the hair is gonna look like legs, the legs gonna look like a hair, and then giving personality in the way, and then their teeth is holding underneath, and we just flipped in the gallery, and it's still taking time for me to understand this piece after making it. Well, that is my last slide, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for listening. And I'm sorry that happened. Like, just insane.
That was nuts. We're gonna open it up to some questions. I'm trying to fix this. I'm gonna also run around with this and hand it to you so you can talk into it. So our people on Zoom can actually hear the question. And also we'll also take some questions from Zoom too, put it in the Q&A function, and I'll read those as well. So who has a question? Ooh, lots. Well, checks out my running skills.
So what was your process for making the blue and white painted ones where they're painted on the inside? Because I've seen those in person before, and every single time I see them, I'm like, how in the heck did he do that?
So this piece, if there's a narrow opening, then I sometimes cut it in half or cut the bottom part, and then to my best, reaching everywhere with my hand. Sometimes there's a brush having 90-degree angles, and being really patient and then just thinking that I'm gonna do it. If there's a larger opening, like this piece, then it's a little easier to decorate, but then I wanted to give more like a finished look, so I didn't want to cut it. So I just being awkward for hours and then do my best.
Did you ever use a mirror?
That's a good question. I'll think about it, yeah.
So how did you go about developing the works like the Flying Monster?
So Flying Monsters, it was from conversation that I had with our amazing gallery director Michael that we misunderstood each other. I thought I was going to make more wall hanging monster, but then he was thinking about ceiling hanging monster. And then when he said, "Oh, I thought it was gonna be ceiling hanging monster," and then it just popped. I hit my head and, oh, that's such a great idea. I'm gonna challenge myself in a way. So that's what happened.
What was your inspiration on the light bulb?
Light bulb hole? I like that name. Again, the inspiration was coming from the hidden the body, that we think that this is sometimes like we are embarrassed to show it, but then through me, me making this sculpture, I actually have an opportunity to show it, and I also wanted to give more like sculpture showing not certain sexuality in a way. So just so they're really just focusing on the taboo-ish body part.
All right, so I have a question from Zoom. This is from Dr. Smithers. So, how has living in Tennessee the last 2 years changed your work?
Oh, that's a really good question. I know that I have been learning that there's a rich history in craft in Tennessee, especially, and I'm also working for Tennessee Craft Organization, and so still like learning about the culture here. It hasn't been really part of my studio practice yet, but then I know that unconsciously I'm absorbing all the information or my experience, and sometimes it'll come out in my object.
Wansoo, of all the inconsequential toys you could have picked, why did you pick that monkey?
So what I did was that there was so when you go to Goodwill, if you go to Goodwill, then sometimes they sell like a pack of like toys for like $2. And so looking at them, when I just copy their form, a lot of them are casted as like two parts, like a front or back, or like top and bottom. And I also like the fact that it's more like here, this or that. So picking the monkeys and toy soldiers, when I make a mold out of it, I only make like two parts, and I like that more like there's a dichotomous exercise. But picking up the toys, I was just picking it up without really thinking about that. I just thought about it after buying.
So there's a question on Zoom. Which piece took you the longest to create?
I would say either that Emperor vessel that I showed, because I just had to listen to podcasts and Netflix, just making thousands of toy soldiers with my hands, or either this monkey, container, because it has not just one part, but then it has two parts, so I had to like putting it together and then putting all together. I think I counted it. It was a little over 900 monkeys. Yeah.
I never really thought about the prevalence of like pillars or columns in the U.S. How did you manage to make such a large ceramic piece of that column?
Clay is such a tricky material, like making big sculptures sometimes, because it's really fragile. I wanted to just make a color, my height, so it was just challenging even to me, like learning how to make big sculptures. And in process-wise, I just had to like cut individually, because if you look at like columns, like huge columns, they're actually like divided in each section. So I just did the same process where I just divide it and then just put it all together later. Sometimes I'm really into making big sculptures, but it's just so hard to store everything after making it if you don't have a 3-acre field in your backyard.
So another question on Zoom. So how did you decide which traditional Korean tables to include with each monster?
That's also a really good question. I went back to Korea this past May, and I just bought a ton of furniture books, and I basically chose them with my intuition that, I'm more like just aesthetically drawn to this furniture. And then I just studied about that furniture, the table, and then, okay, I guess I'm gonna go for it. There's like some parts that historically that I didn't like, that some tables only for like a man and a woman supposed to serve, but then like more like aesthetically, I just chose it. Yeah.
Well, I have a question for myself. So looking at your older work, you actually used real furniture. In this particular exhibition, you recreated that furniture in clay. Why was that decision?
First of all, just if I think about just replicating Korean furniture, I don't have ability to make it with wood. And clay has such a flexibility that I can make whatever I want. So in that way, like process-wise, I didn't challenge myself in that way, but then while making it, it also gave me an opportunity to really think about, okay, then what am I making? Why is it so important? Like, why am I hating it so much, but I'm still like making it?
pieces you've made, which one's your favorite? And especially out of the table monster collection, which one is your favorite?
Well, I had a similar question in the afternoon, and I just said that these are all my babies. That like I really care. If I just choose by its aesthetic or the story behind, I like the table a lot just because I just creating monster and giving it personality. I just like the fact that there's a two table and monsters trying to copy the other form. And sometimes I see oftentimes just looking at these monsters, I also see myself as a monster in a way. But then there are all my babies that I kind of grossed out by their texture and their glaze effect or their personality. But then I love them, I guess. Yeah.
Another question from Zoom. Does the Table Monster series depict the conflict between quote controlled and quote uncontrolled form? And if so, who's winning?
Oh, that is a really good question. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who's winning. I think they're still fighting. There's definitely some parts that I'm not controlling and some parts that I'm trying to control. And I think that's a question that I can just keep thinking about. Yeah, thanks for giving me that question.
What made you melt the tables and put it together?
Could you say again?
What made you melt the tables and put them together? How long did it take you to do that?
To make the tables. To make the Korean furniture tables, it didn't actually take too long because I knew that what I was going to make. But then it took more time to really just giving the personality to monsters, or some monsters got parts, like a table-looking parts, a part of their body, and then giving that personality took more time to really just showing its movement. But then replicating the Korean furniture, it didn't really take too long because I knew what I was exactly making it.
Have you had the chance to collaborate with other artists to create something that you wouldn't be capable of doing by yourself?
I haven't done any collaborations, I believe, and that's just something that I'd like to do in the future, and especially, collaboration is such a tool now there where you can actually use some skills that you don't have, or even like just conceptually always like thinking differently, and then learning from the collaboration. So yeah, thanks for suggesting that. I think I'd love to do that in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Have one more question?
So you said that you brought a book back that had all these tables from your country. And so I assume that people in your country would recognize these tables if they saw them.
That's also another good question. I don't think so. They probably know that, this is a traditional table, but then they probably don't know what's used for, or.
Would you ever consider sending specifically this body of work, because it has tables from your country? Would you ever consider sending it to your country, to be seen by people?
I have not thought about it, and yeah, Yeah, that's also a really good idea that now I'm also questioning that. Yeah, thank you for that idea. Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you so much. I'm going to stand here so the Zoom people can see me, but thank you so much. Please give Wansoo or
Thanks for coming.
yeah, again, if you haven't seen the exhibition, tonight is actually First Thursday Art Crawl, and the gallery will be open for another 30 minutes. So if you're on campus watching, come on down to the new gallery if y'all want to go over there and check it out. When you do go to the new gallery, what Wansoo had mentioned, Veronica Cavas is the arts writer for this particular exhibition. She's based out of New Orleans and wrote an incredibly, just a genuine essay specifically for this exhibition. So you should definitely read it. For those of you on Zoom, if you're not here and not able to be here in person to see it, you can go to the new gallery's website at apsu.edu. And you can actually do the 3D virtual tour, and you can actually get the gallery guide that contains the essay and the virtual tour, so you won't miss out on anything. I do want to give a special shout out to Dr. Cruz, who's been running the cameras. He's the director of SICA. The live streaming here would not be possible if it wasn't for her and SICA's support. And you know, as always with the new gallery, always give a shout out to SICA anyway. If it wasn't for the funding from SICA, we wouldn't be able to have these projects and these exhibitions, so thank you. Just to go on the record on Zoom, because it's being recorded, a shout out to Katie, Jamie, and Sarah, the new gallery assistants that helped install the exhibition. They did a wonderful job, so give them a round of applause. Any last words?
Well, thank you so much, guys. I hope to see my works in the gallery. Thanks.
All right, thank you guys. Good night.